Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
Oh, well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking podcast. I hope you guys had a great Christmas and New Year. We took a couple weeks off this year. I think our last episode was the 19th on the live stream. We had fun there. You guys really seemed to like it. We got some good feedback on that. So we might be doing some more of those in 2024. Just getting some guys together, doing some live streams. We had Keith Foskey, Andrew Rappaport, Kevin Hay, Claude Ramsey, all kinds of people jumping on. I'm missing some people, but it was a good time and you guys enjoyed it. But man, getting back into the swing of things. Listen, we're going to do an end of year wrap up probably later in January. Usually we try to do it right in the first week, but we have some guests coming up that we want to drop first. But if you have just started listening, I just got a message yesterday from a guy who said, I just started listening and I'm going back through the back catalog. We got 250 episodes, and just in this year, we had guys like Dusty Devers, who's now State Senator Dusty Devers, Dale Partridge, James White, Chris Larson, Executive President of Ligonier, obviously Keith Foskey from Your Calvinist, Andrew Rappaport, many, many more. Just some great guests talking about all kinds of good things. So go back in that catalog, even in 2023, check that out. But you can go all the way back to 2021. We're April 19th. We'll be in our fourth year. So you guys have been along for the ride for quite a while. We appreciate you telling a friend, sharing the show. That's the only way we grow, and we can help glorify God that way through the program. But I do want to mention right off top, got to talk about Jacob's Supply, sponsored the show. You guys have heard me talk about them very often. This is a brother in the Lord. I attend church with him. He's got a business in Temperance, Michigan called Jacob's Supply. They do building materials, appliances, metal roofing, barns, lumber, 50% off retail, and it's all new stuff, guys. So even if you are in the Midwest, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, you're a few hours away, go there and take the trip. If you're a builder, if you're a realtor, if you just want to do a home remod, renovation, you got to check them out because you're going to save a lot of money on that. And he's a Reformed believer. He's a good guy. But here's the cool thing. They ship nationally for large orders too. They've got a deal right now on luxury vinyl flooring that is phenomenal. Core-Tech. Everyone else is selling it for $8-9 a square foot. I think they're down to like $1.50 or $2. It's brand new. They've got it in all kinds of options and colors. And that's just one of the deals that they have there right now, and they'll have that for a while. They're the number one Core-Tech seller, I think, either in the state or nation. They just do a really good job with that. But jacobsupply.com, you can see their website, or you can call them at 734-224-0978. Like I said, even if you're in the area, a couple hours away in the Midwest, go check them out in Temperance, Michigan, or give them a call at 734-224-0978. See what they can ship you nationally. Jacob Supply, great guys, sponsored the show. We got to support our brothers in the Lord that own businesses, that are influencers at where they work. That's how we grow. That's how we advance the kingdom, and proud to have him as a sponsor. Cool. So, guys, I had a lot of stuff going on. Heck, I just came off of about a 3-week I don't know what it was. It was flu. I got COVID tested. It wasn't COVID. It wasn't the flu, but sinus infection. Couldn't talk, couldn't swallow food. Got on some antibiotics last week and feeling a little bit better. You might hear a little bit of nasally here in the audio. I'm just getting over it, but actually brings us into our guest because we were supposed to have him on a few weeks ago and I had to call up and cancel, which I very rarely do. In 4 years, we've canceled 2 appointments. He was the second one in 4 years. I felt bad doing it, but I couldn't even talk. So praise the Lord. I'm kind of on the mend and feeling better, and we're excited to have him here today. It's Tracy T.C. Cook. He's the executive director of Powerhouse Youth Center in Washington, Indiana. He's dedicated to glorifying God through building relationships with teens and sharing the gospel. He's married with 2 children. Tracy's also running for Daviess County Commissioner, which I know a little bit about. As you guys know, I'm a county commissioner here in Monroe County since 2016. So we wanted to talk to him. We wanted to see what's going on with him, kind of give us the backstory of his life, where he's at, and maybe talk politics for a little bit. TC, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Hey, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm glad you're doing better. It looks like you got a head start on your New Year's resolution to cut a few pounds probably, with all
Yeah.
that sickness going on. You didn't want it that way, but hey, it came either way, huh?
You know, when you're 42, you'll take it. It's like, oh, I'm sick for 2 weeks. I can't eat anything. I think this is the Lord telling me to, He's inducing my New Year's resolution. Like, stop putting so much food in your mouth. Have a little self control. Don't be a city without
Right.
walls. You know what I mean?
That's right. All these guys out there doing fasting for the first of the year, all that stuff, cleansing. You're like, yeah, I took
Yeah.
care of that. I got it done. Check off my list.
Right now,
Yeah,
now the
no,
goal now the goal is not to overdo it. Now that we're back to eating food, but it's hard around Christmas and New Year's when you got all that good food for the holidays. But TC, tell us a little bit about yourself, because we met down at the Fight Laugh Feast conference. We talked for quite a while. One of the days you said, "Hey, I'm thinking about running for office." I definitely encourage you, because I've always said we need more believers in public office. There's some Christians that believe, hey, we should stay out of the sphere. The church is too political. I say, no, the church hasn't become more political. I think the culture's just become more religious, and that has left us to then defend the biblical worldview in the public square as elected officials. So before we get into that, I know I read a short bio, but give us a little backstory of the origin story, so to speak, of TC Cook.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ended up here in Davis County, actually, Davis County, Indiana. If most of you guys probably don't know where that's at, but it's in between Indianapolis and Evansville, and then you got Bloomington a little bit to the east where IU campus is. So we're kind of smashed in between there. But dad was a coal miner. He graduated on Saturday, started coal mining on Monday, right? So he's been a coal miner his whole life in Kentucky. I was born in Kentucky, lived there for, I don't know, roughly 6 months or so. Then we got here in Davis County because he followed the coal mines, and so lived in the same house. Dad still lives there to this day, right there in a small little town in Davis County called Cannelberg. Fun fact, though, in Kentucky, I was born in a place called Tadpole Holler. And it was a one road in and one road out, buddy. One lane too. So yeah, that's where I actually 6 months of my life was spent. But then we moved here to Davis County, and so went to school, did a little basketball. I was 6'4", which is, I'm 6'5" now. I was 6'4" when I was in 7th grade. And so I grew 1 inch after that. So you can imagine, in being in Indiana, in the Hoosier state, that
Yeah, they were recruiting you hard.
Oh, it was crazy. So I gave in, did that for a little bit, but we just didn't have a lot of money growing up, and we weren't broke as far as, like, I had food, right, and I had clothes, and but mom was putting clothes on layaway at Walmart, and paying them off, and then we would get those clothes for the summer, meaning, and we'd have those new clothes for the next school year, right? So there were some things that we just had to kind of sacrifice through the time, and over the years, coal mining became a better paying job, and that type of stuff. So dad does well now, but just growing up, that's where we were, and so didn't have a lot, but we had enough, and kind of went to church growing up as a kid, but things just weren't always cohesive in our household, right? So mom and dad ended up getting divorced when I was around 12, 13 years old, and lived with dad for a little bit, then moved in with mom. And so when basketball came around and I was playing and doing well, I kind of took a look at the landscape of mom just not having hardly any money, and me having to work, and at 6'5", being the tallest kid in your high school. Almost at that time, you were center, right? You were right there in the middle playing basketball. Well, 6'5", the Charles Barkley days of 6'4", being a power forward, were kind of going away, and everybody was getting taller. It seemed like you got point guards that are 6'4", now you got them that are 6'8", right? So I was like, I don't think I'm really going to make it probably anywhere. If I did, it might be like a small private school or something like that just needed something. But so I quit and I started working, and I had a coach. It was phenomenal. This coach was, he was a JV coach, and he came to me and he said, "Listen, man," he's like, "you're gonna have to work the rest of your life. Do you really want to start now?" And I said, "Well, it's not really a choice that I have. I have to start now. I have to help out. I have to help mom out." And I didn't regret that, and I still don't. I wasn't mad at mom for that. I actually enjoyed work and wanted to work, and so that's what I did. Started working, doing odd jobs, and then it was about 17 years old when God saved me, and I was going to a youth group because there was a lot of girls there. I mean, I'm being honest, right? Like
Right.
that was like we had a youth group in town in a small community, and 200 kids were showing up, and about half of them were female. So, hey, this is a chance that, and they were from all other schools and stuff, so that's a chance for me to kind of see how many fish were in the sea type thing. Right. And so,
Yeah.
and I tell people, hey, I did that just for that reason. I didn't really care about God, but I did it. But it ended up working because I married a girl from there, so it worked, and we're still married to this day. So, but the Lord saved me, and I started following after Him. I got rid of all the junk I was doing, and I was drinking, smoking, chewing before it was legal, and doing all that stuff. Right, just got rid of all of it, and stopped partying, and just kind of really put my head down and started reading and started studying and started asking questions and trying to figure out who God is through Scripture, and did that all the way through. I had a gentleman at a youth group that he lived a couple houses down from me, and he said, "Hey, does anybody struggle waking up in the morning to read?" And I'm like, "Yep, I do. Here I am, 17 years old, dude. I didn't want to wake up." And I was like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "Well, I'm opening my house up. Anybody can come by. I start reading at about 6:00, 5:30, 6:00." And I said, 5:30? He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'll be there." And so literally from my junior year, my senior year, I hardly missed a day. I woke up at 5:30 to go to this man's house every morning. Sometimes we would sit and read, sometimes together, sometimes we'd read on our own, sometimes we'd just sit there and quiet and just sit there. And then we would go about our day. But I did that consistently every single day, 5 days a week, at his house. And those times really started to shape who I was, who I am now, and as a man. And so started working at a youth facility my senior year of high school. And then when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college. I ended up staying here and working. And I've worked here for about 6 years. Left, did some odd things, ran an insurance business, was a firefighter, full-time firefighter for a while, was a mechanic for a while, worked at a factory, I drove Amish for a while. Another fun fact, my Amish driving service is called hauling A. And you could take that however you want to. And it could be hauling Amish, it could be whatever, but that's what I called it, was hauling A. But I did a lot of different things. And then I wound up back here about 4 years ago at this youth facility. And it's been incredible ever since. This is where God has taught me a lot of stuff through that time away with just business and different things that I now can apply back here at the youth facility. So it's a good time.
Yeah. No, that's good. So you said your parents got divorced around 12 or 13. Did you grow up in a Christian home, or going to church, or attending, or knowing anything about God, or was it really that first experience at youth group?
Yeah. So my dad's dad was a Southern Baptist pastor. He died though when my dad was 7, so I never got to meet him. My mom's dad was a Southern Baptist pastor for a long time. He did leave in like the 80s before the resurgence kind of took place, right? He's like, this thing's going downhill, I'm out. And so he did leave, but I got to meet him, and he passed away when I was around 15 or so. But I got to spend summers with him sometimes and different things. So both parents had that background, but we were hit and miss. We'd have years where we'd go consistently. We'd have a lot of down years. I mean, there was a lot of rocky times in the family, and
Sure.
some addiction, some different things going on. And so it was like I said, just kind of hit and miss. But I had some foundational things there that I knew who God was. I was baptized at 6 years old. And so I knew all that stuff, but I left it and just kind of blew with the wind type stuff,
Yeah, I've often said on this podcast, anyone who listens for a time, they're tired of me saying this, but I relate to that. I said the sinner's prayer at 7, and God saved me at 24. One of those kind of things for me. So real quick, not to belabor this point too much, but the gentleman who I'm always curious, the gentleman who had the Bible studies, and that was kind of formative for you. What perspective was he coming from in Christianity? Because the gentleman who really shaped me for a couple years in my 20s, I'm on the opposite side of the theological spectrum now for him, but the Lord used him very greatly in my life in my 20s. So I'm always curious to know, like, was that something that you look back on and you go, oh, we probably wouldn't align too much on some doctrinal stuff, or was he formative in that as well too when you were younger?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We would not align on some doctrinal things. But there are some, what I would call the basic things like if you're not doing these, you're not a Christian. The Trinity
Orthodox.
is
Yeah,
in
sure.
line with, yeah. There's just some key principles that are there, that he kind of taught me and formed me. The church I was going to at that time, totally, I would disagree with a lot of what they would say now, doctrinally, right? But it doesn't discredit even the guy who's running the Powerhouse, which the guy who I met with in the morning and the guy running the Powerhouse were the two most influential men in my life at that time. Taught me how to be a man, taught me how to be a husband, how to be a father, just by watching them, right, and watching what they did, and taught me how to pray, right, and I would say I'd say prayer is almost the equalizer. If you notice, there's a lot of non-reformed or even non-Calvinistic people who pray pretty reformed and pretty Calvinistic prayers right out there. So, but taught me the prayer part of it, and but yeah, I would it's not Pentecostal, right? It's not apostolic, but it's definitely more of
Sure.
that side, tends towards more of that side of things, would be my way
Yeah.
of thinking it.
Among many things that really I struggled with growing up too, what was the way we prayed. I was homeschooled. I had a really good education. My mother was a teacher, and I'm grateful for being homeschooled up until my junior year of high school. But there were some things in the church where it was, well, we don't talk about that. Jonathan Edwards was a great preacher, but he believed a little weird, and we don't, Um, but the prayer always got me. It was like, well, you have absolute free will, but we would pray, Lord, I remember praying for one of my uncles, Lord, save him. Well, if the Lord
Yep.
saves,
Yep.
then, or bring someone in his path so he can
Right.
make a choice. It's like, well, then the Lord's still ultimately the author and finisher of our faith. And there were some things growing up where I just didn't get good answers when talking to the youth pastor or the lead pastor. And it was really very tradition driven. Well, this is what we believe because this is the way it's been. And in my 20s, the Lord kind of shed me of all those traditions. And I'm not going to get into length in my testimony because people have heard it who've listened, but went from very kind of spirit-filled church, but very legalistic and almost like fundamental Baptist, to a very Pentecostal. And, they were sending people out from Bethel so we could see feathers and
Right.
gold fall from the ceiling. So I've had the span of the
Yeah.
theological, right? And the Lord just stripped away all those traditions and said, why don't we just believe what the Bible says? And when you really get into church history and see what our early church fathers and even up through the 14th, 15th, 16th century believed, it's very different than kind of that charismatic Pentecostalism that we've been involved in Western Christianity over the last 150 years.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
think it's
always.
interesting that a lot of people who are kind of in that area and stuff, a lot of people were like, we're not going to talk about doctrine because doctrine divides, right? That's kind of the
Right.
terminology, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, but yet they have, like, we don't have, but yet they do have a doctrine, right? Like the fact that, like, that's what that a lot of people don't understand but you do have an actual doctrine. It just might not be a biblical one, right?
Yeah.
And so you even trying to stay away from it is a doctrine in and of itself, because you
Yeah.
create followers of what you're saying, trying to stay away from that. And so I find that very interesting with a lot of people, a lot of kind of it's just all about Jesus. That's all we want to talk about. It's just all about Jesus. And I'm like, I want to talk about that too. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Jesus. But that's not what they
Yeah.
mean. They just mean, hey, it's just, let's just love everybody. It's just all about Jesus. And really that's just like a wall that they're trying to put up so that they don't have to wrestle with some tough questions.
Yeah, it's funny because I've always said the Reformed and Calvinistic folk were the let's define terms before let's define terms was necessary. Nowadays, we have to. If you're talking about
Yeah.
anything, not even theological or doctrinal, if you're
Yeah.
just talking in the secular world, you have to define terms. And now we see that the left and the secular and pagans are redefining all sorts of terms. But that was one of the things that really that I really embraced and really loved about Reformed theology is we need to define terms, define biblical terms. What do words mean? What does the original text mean? And I think we were ahead of our time on that, because now to have any conversation, even when you say, well, we just want to love. Well, what are you saying when you mean love? Do you mean accept? Or do you mean
Oh,
chastise and discipline because we care for you? Those are two different things. And the Bible defines love very clearly for us. And even sadly, in Western Christianity, what most churches are calling love is not love at all.
Correct.
So yeah, I think that's very important.
They're
But
really
that,
just saying accept, right?
yeah,
Accept
yeah,
all things. Accept
yeah,
them is
accept
what
all
they're really
things.
saying. We were driving through a smaller town, even in our community here, but it was outside of our county. But they had a billboard up that said it had a mask on, back in the COVID days, and right
Yeah,
next to it, "Love your neighbor" is what it's saying. So it's "Love your neighbor, wear a mask," and it's like, well, hold on, that you're not actually what you're saying is that you don't want them to know the truth, right, of what's really going on here. Just
yeah,
put a mask on and be quiet, and that'll love your neighbor. And we had Francis Collins, you had all those guys kind of push all that stuff into the evangelical world. And but yeah, we got to define a lot of these old dead guys that we love to follow, that we love to read. They were defining terms well before, so the
yeah,
terms have been defined through scripture, right? And we just have to know that. And
yeah.
so yeah, it is. And you talked about the liberalism and all that stuff, but even on the Republican side, the conservative side, you have Vivek Ramaswamy, who is there is a God and he's real. Well, define God, right?
Yeah.
Because he's
What
an
God?
Indian. Yeah, which one are you
There's
talking
quite a few
about?
gods for him. So yeah.
Right, even though he says no, there's only one and he all lives inside of us and I believe the same things you guys believe. That's just not true, and it's just disingenuous of what he's saying. And I know why he has to say, I know why he's saying it, I get it, but it's just not true because he hasn't defined his term of who God is. That's sad that we have to even get to that point where we have to define God, and but we do.
Mm.
so
Vivek's going to
so I,
be so if you've ever worked in politics, which I have, uh, up at my state capitol, I've ran some national campaigns, been to some conventions, been to some leadership stuff. Been down to Washington D.C. in the White House,
Mhm.
got to meet Trump when he invited us down there. So you're around politicians enough, you recognize Vivek as a very good politician. And don't mishear me. I'm not saying a same worldview or I'm going to vote for. I'm saying he's good.
Correct.
He's a good politician. He knows where to shift, what to say. I wouldn't trust him as far as I can spit, but that's just
Right.
because I'm jaded because I've been involved in politics since 2002. So
Hmm.
you look at that and you go,
Yeah.
he knows what to say. So, and that's not an endorsement. That's actually a bad thing. When I call you a
Yeah.
politician, that means I don't like you. If I say you're a public servant, then we're in the same headspace because that's what I
Right.
truly believe. Which this will transition us nicely, talking about not only
Yeah.
doctrine and certain Christians believing certain things, but public office as well too. I've had some
Yeah.
Christians come up to me and go, "You should not be involved in politics. That's not our space. We should be, advancing the kingdom through the church and things like that." Um, where do you stand on that? Obviously, I think you and I are going to align here because you're
Yeah.
running for public office. What do you say to people like that might say, "Hey, that's not our sphere," or "You shouldn't do it," or "Hey, let's just keep our heads down and meet every week in our building and preach the word there, but not go out into the public sphere."
Yeah. So we got to be clear on the fact that the keys to the kingdom are given to the church, right? And so we've got to be clear. We also got to be clear on the fact that there are different spheres of influence. However, those spheres of influences are made up of people. That is God created people, created in His image people. And you got the family, you got the church, and you got the civic government. Some even include the fourth foundational one, which is the self rule, right? Which is a sphere in and of itself. But if you don't have that, you don't have any of the other ones. So that's why I just kind of do the three. And but in each of these spheres, God is Lord over all of them. And so we've
Yeah.
also got to remember that as believers. And these are foundational. I'm not trying to make it sound like if you don't believe this way, you're an idiot, but they're foundational things to Christian doctrine, right?
Yeah.
And if you read some of these old dead guys, right, you'll understand. And I keep using dead because dead men walking, but you got to understand that that's where they were coming from. That these guys were entrenched in a political sphere also, as they were pastors, as they were Christian laymen, as they were theologians. They were entrenched in all things because all of life for all of Christ, right? And so that's where I kind of land on that. So it's interesting because for the Powerhouse, I go and speak at a lot of different churches on a Sunday. Sometimes they'll give me 7 to 8 minutes, and then I get afterwards. Sometimes they let me preach. Sometimes they, like this past one, they said, "Hey, we have our service at the beginning, then we have our Sunday school. You get the whole Sunday school time. We'll let you come up during the service 7 to 8 minutes, but then you got the whole Sunday school time." It's a great. Any particular topic? Nope, not at all. Fair enough. So I'm going there, and it's in our county, and word's starting to get out that I'm running for county commissioner. And so in our county, your county might be different, but we have 3 districts, but the whole county gets to vote for each district. But I can only
Okay.
run if I live in that district, right?
Right. Yep.
And that's because we have a statute here that if you're under 50,000 population and below, then the whole county kind of works as a unit.
Sure.
But you still want to spread out the elected officials inside of the county itself. So that's why we have the district. So so I've got to touch the whole county. I've got to talk to the whole county, right? So I'm at this one church, and I didn't mention that I was running for county commissioner because some churches are a little bit weird about some of that stuff. And
Sure.
I was there with my Powerhouse hat on, right? And so I gave the message, did that, and as I'm walking off, the pastor said, "Man, that sure sounded like a political campaign to me." And he gave me a wink and he laughed. And he's like, "That's just a joke. As you guys might know, TC's running for county commissioner."
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he was upset at me, not like mad or anything. He's like, "Why didn't you say anything?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Sometimes like people are just, there's some churches who are just kind of weird." And then an elder comes up to me and said, "Dude, like you need to be telling the churches that you're running, because we need Christians in office here in our town. We need people who are going to stand for truth." And I'm like, "What?" I mean, it just blew me away, because we're small rural area. Even rural areas almost get a little bit weirder about some of these things than
Sure.
most. But I was like, wow, what in the world? And so I think the church, and COVID probably helped some of this, but we're hungry for that. We're finally, people are finally saying, "Hey, we've been quiet too long. We've set too long, and we've kind of lived off of this borrowed morality that our founding fathers had, and that the Constitution was wrote for. You have Adams, who said that the Constitution was only for moral and religious people. If you don't have that, then the Constitution fails. And so we've kind of had this borrowed morality, or even a pietist view of that morality, right, for a long time, and then all of a sudden it gets stripped away because we're told we're not. We're not, what was the term they were using? You're like sufficient, not sufficient, but you're not worthy. I'm going to use that word, to be open, right? Churches need to shut down because they're not. What's the term? You know the term I'm thinking of?
Yeah, they weren't essential.
Essential.
Yeah.
That's the term, right? Yeah, churches aren't essential. And you have John MacArthur's like, "Hold on, bud. Like, you have strip clubs and liquor stores open. Why in the world aren't churches essential, right?" And so we finally realized that, hold on, that they're taking away, they're even calling us non-essential people. That's just not true. And so that's where I kind of fall on that thing is here's the thing, all of life, I need to live as for Christ, no matter what it is. And there's those fears, and each one of those fears, the Lord is the Lord over. And God has established a government. It's on his shoulders, right?
Yeah.
And he places who he wants into leadership. Does that always mean, well, what it does mean for us sometimes is sometimes he places people there for our judgment, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. You could argue that's what America is experiencing right now.
I don't think it's even that big of an argument to make. Like, it's there. Like, I mean, you just have to say it. People see it, right? And I'm talking non-believers see it. They're like, "Dang, this isn't good." And but then also you read in the Psalms and stuff. But a community or a nation that actually fears the Lord, blessings will come. And so that means that we have to have governments that are following the Lord, because it is a sphere that he created. And to do that, we have to have God-fearing men in those positions. And that is literally why I threw my name in the hat.
I love it. Just to backtrack a little bit, I would say I totally agree with the way you handled speaking at the church. I was in those same predicaments where pastors would say, "Hey, come speak." And right, I leave it up to the pastor. I look at the pulpit as a very sacred place. I'm not going to go in there and self-promote. I leave it up to leadership or elders if they want to say I'm running for something, that's fine. But I like the way you handle it, because I was always very, probably the weakest part is being able to self-promote, because it seems a little prideful. Now, I'll tell you everything I've done and accomplished and why I believe it and why you should vote for me. But to kind of, you know what I mean? To say this is my title and I'm running for this. So I do like the way you handled that. And then to a lot of Christians, like we said, I think before we started recording, a lot of people argue, "Oh, the church is too political. The church is too political." I would say the secular world has become too religious,
Yeah.
because they're stepping into areas that is the sphere of the church, and the church has to respond. And I'm tracking with everything you said there. What worries me too, and this is something, not worries me, but something that kind of opened my eyes, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Is 10 years ago, even I would say even as near as 10 years ago, I was on board with the Ben Shapiro's and the Dennis Prager's and
Sure.
the Matt Walsh's, even though Matt Walsh really wasn't around 10 years ago, but he
Right.
was starting to come around into this kind of conservatism, right? And I
Hmm.
was up at my state capitol. I'm debating with Republicans, and I was always
Hmm.
debating a lot of pro-life people, where I was so frustrated with them. Not, I would say, oh, they have no principle. They're not they run
Hmm.
on one thing, do another thing.
Right.
Um, and it took me a long time to realize that even conservatism outside of a biblical worldview
Yeah.
is nothing to stand on. First of all, what are you conserving if you don't have the same biblical worldview as me? And then also even realizing, like the Dennis Prager's and the Ben Shapiro's, which when you say Judeo-Christian, those two things are opposite. One believes in the Messiah that has redeemed all and is Lord over all, and one doesn't. So then you're
Hmm.
going, I'm not even on the same footing with some of my Jewish friends, because their worldview is totally different than mine. So I've really started to come around, I would say, in the last 5-6 years of going, the most important thing you can have as an elected official is a Trinitarian biblical worldview that understands who Christ is, understands who God is, and then work out from there. Everything else is eventually going to fall to the wayside. It's going to take shortcuts. I even see a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters in the pro-life movement that will shoot
Hmm.
down an abolition bill and go, well, let's just
Yep.
make it a
Yep.
12-week or 10-week bill. Let's allow
Yep.
murder up until this time. Um,
Yep.
so it's this thing where I've kind of had this realization to where really Christ has to be the foundation of everything,
Yep.
or it's for even for political grounds, or it's just not going to work. Where do you land on that? I'm assuming you're pretty close to me, to where it's like the Bible is the inspired word of God, and that's where I make my decisions, and I base everything off that, and that's how I'm going to serve the people. Is that kind of where you're coming from too?
No, that's 100% where I'm coming from. I think some of the other things that you were kind of picking around at in some of these things is teaming up even with people. And there's a way and a right way and a wrong way. We see this. What's his name? Is his name James Lindsay or what's the guy's
Mhm.
name who's an atheist, right? Um,
Yeah, James
and
Lindsay.
and we saw during like the Black Lives Matter movement and all that stuff where a lot of Christians were flocking to kind of join up with him, letting him speak at Christian conferences, even things like that. Which I was like, hold on, I get like we're on the same page on some things, so I get kind of that, but letting him come to a conference that is very very much outspokenly scriptural based, following scripture to speak doesn't quite compute in my mind, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And when there were plenty of Christian men who have been speaking out and were speaking out against the same thing, right? The same movements, the same social justice type things, right? That they could have had, and they did have some of those that I just didn't think it was needed. And what we found now is he's turned full fledged against what he would deem Christian nationalism, the term, and he doesn't want a Christian nation. Well, that's obvious. Like I don't know an atheist out there right now who would say, "Yeah, sign me up for that," right? Because they don't
yeah,
believe that Christ is a foundational thing.
yeah,
That's part of their belief, literally. And
yeah.
so that gets kind of weird, and it doesn't make sense to me that we would continue. Now, do I have non-believers who are friends? Absolutely, right?
Sure.
Am I going to them for advice on how to live a Christian marriage? No, I'm not.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they don't know, right? Do I have people I hang out with, I talk to, who really could care less to step foot inside of a church? Absolutely, right? But I'm
Yeah.
not going to go to them about kind of life practices, because I believe that the Bible has all the answers for that. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to go to someone who uses that same belief in that, because it is a foundational thing. And so anything I do then has to be based on that. And people I partner with and I do things with have to be based on that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think secular conservatism, the Ben Shapiro's and all that stuff, we start to find out that Ben Shapiro and the LGBTQ and all that, like he has some big donors, right, who are a part of that movement, who want to see
Yeah.
that movement grow. So he's telling people not to speak about certain letters in the LGBTQ, right?
Yeah.
And then there's ones that he will speak on, like transgenderism and stuff like that, but he's not going to speak on lesbian and gay factor, right? Even though Old Testament wise, because Ben would supposedly hold to the Old Testament, it's forbidden in there, right? In the Old
Yeah.
Testament and in the New. But yet he's not doing that because of some donors that he has. So, and I don't think I'm not shocking the world here. This is pretty well known. I'm not trying to throw
Sure.
mud. Is Ben a super smart guy? Yep, he is. He's very smart. Does he have some really good takes on certain issues? Yeah, he really does. But would I want him to be a leader in the conservative movement? I would say if you don't have a foundation, what are you conserving? What
Yeah.
is it?
That was going to be what I usually ask people. What are you conserving? Right. And, it's you get answers that you go, they don't know why they're conserving or what it is they are conserving. And I just want the listeners to know too. I want everyone to understand. I'm not saying you cannot partner even politically with a
Sure,
non-believer if
sure,
if the law or the action is just and righteous. I'm just saying, having a biblical worldview, the scriptures are my dividing line. I've taken advice from a non-believer, but guess what I did first? I went to the Bible and said, okay, this is the dividing line. What is right? What
yeah,
is true? What is just? And if it lines up, then that's where we go forward. So believe me, I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to go run for office and you have to believe exactly how I do, right down to the confession and the doctrine and the theology for me to be able to even hear. No, the crazy thing is we're both believers, and if
right,
you win your race, you're going to realize you serve at the behest of the people. You serve the
correct.
atheist, the secularist, the Christian, the non-Christian, the Muslim. You are a servant to those people. That's how the Lord has instituted it, for you to be a minister of peace and justice. So you don't get to
Mhm.
say, "Well, I don't like the way you believe or the way you look or what you said." I do have a biblical worldview, but I'm here to be a servant of the people, which is, I believe, a very New Testament
Right.
Christian thing, if you want to put it that way. One of the
And
things I really enjoy.
if I could sum up, which that could be pulled out for a clip and use hardcore against me, this probably, but hopefully they'll keep listening to this point right here. The point is I see so many Christians just take truth, or take someone saying as truth, just because they say they're conservative, right?
Yeah,
And that's not where we find truth. We find truth in scripture, right? And
yeah,
and if we don't have truth in scripture, the foundation begins to shake, as far as our worldview goes, as far as our country goes, as far as all that, right, goes.
yeah,
And so I just, like, people will run to Fox News, will run to things, and there are some good people on Fox. There's some people who I'm like, what are you doing? And as Fox is even promoting what was for a while, I think they might have backed up now, but Caitlyn Jenner and all that stuff, right?
sure,
All his, right? They were promoting all these things, Bruce Jenner and all that. And it's like, wait, what happens if we look just like liberalism? What happens if we look just like this progressive mentality? And well, then we aren't conserving anything. And so
yeah,
don't take, just because someone says they're conservative, don't take that as truth, but always take what scripture says as truth, because that's our foundation. So
yeah,
that's what when I was trying to say, like, all that in a nutshell would be that.
yeah. No, and I mean, actions speak louder than words in any arena, right? Whether it's politics or within the church or at your job or relationships, like what someone does and what the actions they take are will always speak louder than what they say.
Right.
Unfortunately, you see a lopsided kind of ratio in the political
Mhm.
world of things
Mhm.
said versus things done, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm excited that you're running, man. I think you're gonna do good there. I hope the Lord sees fit to put you there, because we just need more solid. And look at it's. I keep talking about biblical worldview and men of God and stuff like that, but also understanding how to manage a budget, understanding how to relate to people, how to relate to employees. You know,
Mhm.
I got into as a county commissioner and realized, wow, we have this 55, $60 million budget. We have 550 employees. We've got relationships with, labor forces and unions and the police
Mhm.
department, the health department. You go, oh, there's a lot here to where you just have to have a good head on your shoulders and making wise decisions that necessarily, you're not going to go to the Bible and go, oh, what should I do about? No, there's principles. That's why I say
Correct.
worldview is important. There's principles that you're going to
Correct.
apply to what seems like mundane things, but are actually very, very important. Fiscal,
Mhm.
financial decisions, things like that. And talking to you at length at the conference, and then obviously here too, I just understand. You've run that youth center. There's a lot of stuff
Mhm.
involved there. I know our youth center director here in our county. It is a insane job on just
Yeah.
spinning plates, budgets, relationships. I get
Yep.
it. So I think you're more than qualified for that position. So I'm happy to see you run in that.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest principles that will help anybody in any part of life is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge, all wisdom, right? And
Sure.
we have to have that to lead us and to guide us. We have to, loving your neighbor is a big principle that we all hold dear. And again, we've got to be able to explain what love is, right? And love doesn't always mean acceptance, but love does mean telling the truth, being honest,
Yeah.
showing people, right now I'm hearing things, because once you start putting your name in your hat, people start saying, well, what are you going to do about this? And we need to do that, all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, here, like it's already started. It's just going to compound once the election is finished. But here's a big thing that people don't get as I do believe 100% in ownership of property. Right. I
Yeah.
believe that's a biblical principle. I believe that's a thing. However, how you maintain your property directly affects the neighbor right next to you,
Sure.
and that's because of how property values are assessed, right? So if you have cars on blocks and you have trash that you just throw out in your yard, and you let your house go and all this stuff, it directly affects your neighbor's opportunity to have equity or to even sell their house if it comes time,
Or it
right?
could be a safety issue, which let's remember the Mosaic Law talks about parapet on the roof, right? That's why we have
Yep.
building codes. But go on.
100%. And that's how you create those codes. And that's when I talk about using the Bible, when I talk about using biblical, that's what I'm talking about right there. I'm not talking about a forcible, everybody's got to be a Christian, because first of all, you can't force anybody to be a Christian anyways, right? And
Right.
we know that the Lord saves. And so a government can't force that. And however, you can run a community based on biblical principles like that. And
Sure.
so that's the stuff that I'm excited about, and I'm excited about coming my way. Is it more work? Well, yeah, that's what I signed up for, right?
Yeah.
Is it more time? Is there little intricacies that take place that just like the land and all that stuff? Absolutely, and that stuff just gets me fired up, and just to stand on my hill here in Davis County. Our county has such potential; it really does. And but just like most communities, we just don't have unity, right? And the reason why we don't have unity is because we don't have a mission or a vision or even a goal that we're shooting for. So what do we unify to if there is no mission, vision, or goal, right? And so
Yeah.
so that's the thing. And we have to create a place where people want to live, where they want to work, where they want to grow. And that's what I'm excited about trying to do in Davis County, and trying to just see it flourish. I reached out to Aaron Wren, give Aaron Wren a shout out,
Yeah.
and I said, hey man, because he lives in Indy now, so he lives real close, like that's only 2 hours away. And I said, hey, what do you think about Davis County? You've been here for a while. What do you think about Davis County? And here's what he told me, and I'll just be honest with you. He said Davis County's done. It's dead. It's dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, thank you for that. And then now what that does for me is it just fires me up, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'll
Right.
show you Aaron Wren, right? And I don't think he cares about that. I don't think he minds that at all. And but I'm like, I'll show you. Like, our county's not dead. Our county's not done. But do we have a lot of work to do? Absolutely. But that's one thing that I know, and I know Michigan has this a lot all over the place, but definitely Indiana does too, is just hardworking people. And
Yeah.
that really will take their sleeves, roll them up, and let's get going. if they just had a vision or a spot where they said, here's where we're going to go. Right.
Yeah.
And they'll roll their sleeves up and get to work. And that's what we're going to do.
All right. As we put bookends on this, do you want to take a shot at where do you see us politically in 5 to 10 years? Because I don't think stupid, like Doug Wilson says, I don't think stupid is a good strategy. And right now, we have a lot of stupid going on in politics. I think the pendulum has swung, but I think it's going to start swinging back the other way. That's just me, and I'm talking in generalities. I'm not going to sit here and, prophesy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna say I think there's gonna have to become, because we have some common graces that the Lord gives us anyway to recognize certain things. And what I found is when I'm going out talking to people who are maybe apolitical or, hey, like you said, hardworking, want to make sure there's food on the table, make sure my kids
Mhm.
are taken care of. They go, we're getting into crazy land. They've
Right.
said that for the last couple of years. So, as someone who has their finger on the pulse, what do you see in the next 5, 8, 10 years, either politically or even, in local, state, and federal government? You think we're going to keep going in the same direction? Do you think there'll be a shift? What are your thoughts? And I'm not holding you to anything. I'm just saying, just when you
Sure.
think about it.
Yeah, but we could look back on this in 5 or 10 years and be like, well, one of us was right, right?
Right.
So maybe I'll throw out like 5 things and one of them maybe hits and see which one sticks.
Yeah,
But
there we go.
no, I think if we keep going this direction, right? If we keep going the crazy route, I think it ends up consuming itself, and we're already starting to see that now, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to see that in all honesty, there's a couple of people groups that are actually the ones having babies, right? And this is just a sheer reality, but it's the Muslim faith, and it's actually now the Christian faith, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm seeing that more and more. I think on average, Muslims have about 4 to 6 children. On average, Christians were having about 1 something, and now that's bumped up. And I don't know about your friend group, but my friend group is having 2, 3, 4, 5
Yep.
kids.
It's 2.4 for Muslims, 2.1 for Christians, and the national average is 1.7. So I just read those numbers a few months ago and was discussing them with my pastor. That's the only reason why I jump in and give you those. So
Sure.
exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trending upward, which is a good thing. As far as Christians are trending upward with having children, and so you see the kind of agnostic, atheist type group who are just choosing not to have children, who aren't getting married till later, all that stuff, and the feminist movement, right? All those things, they're going to end up consuming themselves because they don't reproduce. However, they have a safety net, and that safety net is education. Well, they'll just reproduce through education purposes, right? Meaning that we're sending our kids off to colleges and things that are doing that. So, but here's I think COVID was a great highlighter for that. And I don't want to belabor the fact of COVID, but I do think it actually shined a lot of light to a lot of things. And one is that rural communities actually began to thrive during COVID. They just did. They were the ones that were saying no to a lot of the mandates. They were saying, no, we're doing just fine. We don't need that. And we saw that, and we saw churches in rural communities thriving, growing, people driving a couple hours just to go to that church in the rural area. And so I kind of steal Michael Foster's gig when he says county before country, and I add Christ above all, right? I do believe that we're going to start to see some more localism take place. And I think
we already have. 100% we already have.
Our country, right? It really is. It's the best thing for our country. That's how our country was actually built. It was built on states and local and all this stuff. And we still have those protections, some, protections of the states, right? Where the states get to kind of choose different things. On a national level, though, I think you're going to see liberalism progress 10 times more, but it's going to be a lot less people. And what I mean by that, they're going to hit harder and hard. They're going to double, triple, quadruple down on these things. We just saw California pass a legislation where you can have sex transition surgeries for illegal immigrants now, and that's mandated. Now the healthcare has to pay for that in California. So they're going to triple, quadruple down, but it's going to push more people out into the middle of the United States, and you're going to start seeing the middle of the United States grow.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on that.
Look at,
It's already happening. I'm
yeah.
not like prophesying, but it's going to really highlight and get bigger.
Yeah. Which I think is a good thing, because what happens is you read through Ecclesiastes, which we're going through in small group for the whole year. And I love Ecclesiastes. A lot of people go, "Oh man, what a depressing book." I go, I don't know. There's a man who's seen it, lived it. And he's giving you words of wisdom of, yes, there's nothing new under the sun, but also talking about, look at, if you're striving for something in your job, that's in vain. But in the next breath, he says, it is an absolute good thing to work with your hands, to build things, to have a job. And we've lost self-reliance in this country. You live in even a semi-rural area or a smaller city. A funny story. My brother was talking to his wife, and he was saying how he told his wife, I got to go deer hunting. He goes, it's just been 100 years when we used to go out and hunt for our food. That's still in my DNA. And now we walk down the aisle and go, I want some beef. I want some chicken. I want some duck, you know? Yeah. And it's this weird thing to where the Lord has created us to build things and to gather things and to hunt things and all these things. And the rural areas really do find that. And you're absolutely right. During COVID, it was like, we're outside working, we're getting vitamin D, and lo and behold, that was the vaccine we needed for COVID, when everyone else was holed up inside and, for 5, 6, 7 days, 2 weeks, whatever, as non-essential workers, and going, oh, I hope this thing passes us by like the angel of death, when in fact you were just hurting yourself worse by not doing those things. Yeah, so we could talk about that all day, but as we wrap this up, can you give a shout out to where people can follow you? Maybe if they want to, follow you on the campaign, we'll make sure we link this up so anyone who's listening to this can just click on it. But let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, I'm pretty simple. Facebook is where most people find me at. You can find it at TC Cook on Facebook. And then from there, then I link it to the campaign and we run there. Getting a website going for that. It's not up yet. We actually don't get to declare until tomorrow. Tomorrow is a declaration, first day of declaring. So we're getting out there quickly. But yeah, that's where TC Cook on Facebook. You can find me there, and I'll shoot you the link so you can have it on there.
Cool. Awesome. Got anything else for us before we get out of here, TC?
No, man. Hey, if I could recommend anything to anybody is get involved locally where you're at. Most of us, very few can probably make a difference in the nation. Some can make a difference in their state, but all of us can make a difference in our community where we're at. So get started there. How do you get started? Join a local church. Go out, just go to your meetings, go to council meetings, go see what the issues are and see if your talents, your gifts, whatever can help, because it takes a whole community to run a good community that's actually thriving. And so it'll take you. So go out there, and we need more people to get involved.
Couldn't agree more. We are totally on board with that. TC, thanks so much for taking time sitting down with us today.
I appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
Cool, guys. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. As always, you can go to dmwpodcast.com. Check us out. Back episodes. We got the merch cave there, too. We got some new T-shirts, some fun stuff. Wine 'em, dine 'em, Romans 9 'em. We've got the Presbyterian Thug Life on there. We've got the James White honoring his cross-country trek in his RV. Couple different things, fun stuff, conversation starters, and the T-shirts, the hats, they support the show, so we appreciate it. As always, guys, remember the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless. Be sure to check us out at dmwpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the PubTV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuits.